There's one thing I don't understand. If a white person leaves Poland and gets to the United States of America, the population do not have problem with that guy. But if a black person leaves Africa or another place and moves all the way to the US, the population will have a problem. And the population that will have the highest problem or the biggest problem of all is the black population. Black don't like black moving to their territory. It's like you're coming to steal our opportunities, which is not something that sits right with so many Africans, and or rather so many African Americans. You can see the clear distinction that exists between Africans and the Micronesians. The Micronesians only have ancestry that is mixed. They have one from the Austronesians and they have one which is from the Southeast Asians. These people came all the way from the continent, as I've just discussed with you. Now, this thing we are judging people up and down because of their skin color. Started so long ago. And the person who is fighting the most is the black person. How much self-hatred do we have? I think it's high time we put away with it. There's so much to a person than the skin color. There's so much. Believe me, there's so much to a person. Don't think somebody's good because they're light skin. And don't think someone is bad because they have a black skin. No, don't think that way kindly. This video is here to enlighten us. We are all humans. The Micronesians are just humans like us. They are no different. We are one. We are one, guys. We are just one people. Yeah? We are one people. So I think you love this video. I think if you like it, subscribe. And if you like it, support me on Patreon kindly. Give a donation on Patreon.
Under the hashtag Being Micronesian, she showed examples of racism and discrimination. Shah Ungalungal says being Micronesian means watching a steady stream of hate, such as being compared to cockroaches. In one example, a Twitter user calls Micronesians stupid, lazy, promiscuous, unreliable, and entitled. Now, Victor is among those from Micronesia who responded to the hashtag. He says he used to live on the US East Coast and that people there didn't even know Micronesia exists. When he moved to Hawaii, he thought he would be welcomed as a fellow Pacific Islander, but instead he found being Micronesian in Hawaii means people hate something about you without knowing you. As the hashtag grew wider attention, Anita Hofschneider at Honolulu Civil Beat wrote an article about the Twitter conversation. She followed up with an essay on why talking about anti-Micronesian hate is important. But while she receives strong support for the articles, some people's attitudes are hard to change. Anita tweets one reader who said her Micronesian neighbors are filthy, uneducated, and disease-ridden, and that they're taking over Hawaii. Femi?
There's so much to talk about. Shah Ungalungal, who studied the Being Micronesian hashtag, joins us from Honolulu. Also in Honolulu, we have Anita Hofschneider. She's a journalist on Civil Beat. That's an online news site, and she wrote those articles that we mentioned earlier that gathered so much attention in Hawaii and beyond. And in Portland, Oregon, we have Kathy Jetnil-Kitchener. She is a Marshallese poet, artist and activist, and she also co-founded a non-profit dedicated to finding solutions to climate change and other environmental issues threatening the Marshall Islands. Ladies, it's good to have you here. Shah, as we were doing that first little chunk, and Malika was in that first little chunk, your face was just changing in terms of passion and steam coming out of your head. I could feel it. But this idea of Micronesians going to the US and particularly into Hawaii, why would they go in the first place, Shah?
Because of the Compact of Free Association, which, at least for Palau, we became a sovereign nation in 1994. But in free association, it gave the people of Palau the ability to come to the United States. We don't have to necessarily get things like green cards or really work on work visas. It was just, we can come to the United States, we can work, we can attend school, and the same kind of in other Micronesian countries.
Sure.
And Hawaii is the obvious place to go because it's kind of an in-between. But it's not quite as big as the United States, but
sure. So it was open to Micronesians to go to Hawaii, to go to the rest of the US. But why would they want to? The invitation was there, but why?
The African cradle, which is the human's beginning, life started in Africa, specifically in the East African savannas. This has been proven so many times, historically, scientifically, whatever way you think of it. Africa is the cradle of mankind. So Africa, often called the cradle of humanity, holds the root of all modern humans. Archaeological evidence shows that Homo sapiens first appeared in East Africa around 200,000 years ago. Here in East Africa, amidst the savannas and dense forest, humans developed their earliest tools, languages, and social systems. These early groups were nomadic, living off the land by hunting and gathering, and their survival depended on intimate knowledge of their environment. Around 7,000 years ago, a small population of Homo sapiens began the long journey outside Africa, crossing through the Arabian Peninsula and into Asia. These groups carried with them the genetic and cultural seeds that would give rise to countless civilizations. For many, Africa remained home, and its vastness allowed for the flourishing of diverse cultures. From the complex kingdom of the Nile Valley to the pastoralist societies of the Sahel, Africa's people adapted to a multitude of climates and landscapes. We have a distinctive group of people that are called the Micronesians. They have those cute blue eyes. They are so cute, they are so dark, their darkness is so strong, and that is what makes them distinctive and beautiful. They also have a different hair from the ones we Africans we have here in the continent. You love my hair, I love my hair. Nobody will tell me my hair is bad. I love my hair. The Most High God gave me this, so it's good. If God saw it was good, it is good. Yeah, nobody can tell me otherwise. Now, the origins of the Micronesians, navigators of the Pacific. Thousands of years after humans migrated out of Africa, a distinct population arose from the mainland, deep in the Pacific Ocean. The ancestors of the Micronesians were part of the Australian Austronesian-speaking peoples, whose origin traced back to Southeast Asia. Around 2000 BCE, these seafarers began their remarkable expansion across the Pacific. Their mastery of navigation, guided by the stars, winds, and ocean currents, enabled them to colonize islands thousands of kilometers apart. The Lapita culture, which emerged around 1500 BCE, is seen as the precursor to Micronesian society. These people are skilled potters, farmers, and sailors, leaving behind distinctive ceramics and evidence of early settlements. Over time, the descendants of the Lapita spread across the Micronesian islands, including the Marianas, Carolines, and the Marshalls, where they developed unique cultural identities. Unlike the vast expanse of the African continent, Micronesia consisted of small, isolated islands. This isolation fostered distinct traditions and lifestyle, as each community adapted to its environment. The scarcity of natural resources required careful stewardship, and societies developed systems of trade, resource sharing, and strict social hierarchies. It's clear that Africans and the Micronesians have distinctive features. They are different. In as much as the Micronesians are black, we have some very clear differences.
What do you hear from people you talk to?
Sure. Well, there are lots of reasons why people would leave. One of them is job opportunities, and that's one of the ironies of the discrimination against Micronesians in Hawaii. There's this perception that they don't want to work, that they're lazy, and the reality is, while I'm sure there's some people who are lazy, there's also many, many people who are hardworking and who are, trying to just come to the U.S. because this is a good place for opportunities. For example, I spoke with one Chuukese woman who is a housekeeper in Waikiki, and she was saying that she came to Hawaii because there were no jobs in Chuuk, and she really just wanted to earn money to support her family. And so I think you can't emphasize enough the types of job opportunities that are here. And, the person on Twitter, Angelo Villagomez, he is Chamorro just like me, and I'm Chamorro from Saipan. And I came to the U.S. For education and for jobs. And so it's all very similar. And one thing that is the difference is that if you are a Chamorro from Guam or the Northern Mariana Islands, you are a U.S. citizen. So no one really questions my ability to be here or my right to be here, and nobody calculates how much I'm using in terms of social services. But it's very different for people from Micronesian islands that chose to maintain their sovereignty and be in free association with the U.S. And so the reception you get here is very different.
Kathy, I want to show you a tweet that's from the Being Micronesian hashtag. Let me share this with you. Sean Spondike says, I swear Micronesians have more drama than any other race. These people always get drunk, start fights with their families and anyone just walking around. I'm so over this. Where does that attitude come from?
I'm not sure where that attitude comes from. I mean, I think that there's definitely an issue of alcoholism within some of our community members, but there's an issue of alcoholism with other communities as well. And I think it just has to do with being the latest wave of immigrants to Hawaii, or at least that's what it looks like, because actually there is documented records of Micronesians coming into Hawaii during the plantation era. But we're the latest immigrants now, and so there's this misunderstanding between our communities of why are they here, where are they coming from. And then I think at a state level, it's contributing to that kind of hatred, because there's all of these, news reports coming out saying, Micronesians are benefiting off of the state and they're costing us this amount of money, and then that trickles down to personal interactions and conversations and perspectives like the one that was just, that you just read from that tweet. Yeah.
I want to share another one. It's also hard to hear and hard to read. This person tweets in that he remembers feeling that discrimination during high school, his freshman year in Hawaii. He says, it changed something in me. After hearing local peers cracking jokes about Micronesians being ugly, having too many kids, referring to them as cockroaches, I never again referred to myself as Micronesian in front of anyone who wasn't. He goes on to say, though, that that's changed for him, and this hashtag has helped. He says, I used to tell people I'm Palauan to avoid all the Micronesian stigma, but I am a Micronesian too, and I will stand with anyone who identifies as such. You corner a roach, we'll chew through you. So defiance there, hashtag being Micronesian. But Shah, as I read that, I could see you kind of shaking your head there. What has this done for younger generations of people who hear things like, you are a cockroach, you do not belong here, you are a leech on society?
I actually had a different experience from a lot of Micronesians, because I was born and raised in Oregon. And so I grew up in a place where I knew my community, I knew the Micronesians there. No one really thought anything of it. And then I came to Hawaii for college. And as an 18-year-old, I discovered this. And so I learned right away, and my classmates, and I've seen it with younger Palauans and other Micronesians coming in. When you're asked where you're from, be very specific. My cousins told me when I applied for a job, tell them you're from Oregon. If they press it, say you're Palauan, but whatever you do, don't say you're Micronesian, because they won't hire you.
Shah and Anita, you both have this experience of being able to hear the prejudice without people realizing that the people they're being rude about is the person they're talking to. So this idea of looking Micronesian, first of all, Anita, tell me what looking Micronesian even means. What is that look? Because they obviously got it wrong.
I actually don't know what looking Micronesian means. I mean, these are islands that have long histories of colonization. And so, for example, my last name's Hofschneider, so I'm part German, but that was many generations ago. And so I think a lot of people in the islands have similar experiences of having some, a German last name or some European connection. And so not everybody, but a lot of people tend to look mixed. And so what I take when people say to me, you don't look Micronesian, or you're too pretty to be Micronesian, is that that's some kind of discrimination against people who are darker skinned than me. And that's also just this really indicative of the way that discrimination against Micronesians is so socially acceptable in Hawaii, that people feel comfortable that they can say that to you, to your face. It was really quite astounding when I moved here.
Wow, so you don't even have to eavesdrop a little bit, because I know, Shah, you've been in conversations where people don't realize that you are Micronesian, correct?
Yeah.
Tell us about one. Yeah, tell us what one that really stands out.
I was just standing around with acquaintances on a lunch break, and one of their friends had come up and began just talking about his weekend, and he just went off like, these Micronesians were doing this and my neighbors and they're such trash. And I stopped the conversation to say, hi, I'm Micronesian. And because we were in an area where there's all cafes and eateries around us, the first thing he said was, oh, which restaurant do you work in?
Ooh. Wow.
Because there's this stereotype here that if you're Micronesian, you work washing dishes, sweeping floors, janitorial, food service. And I had to point out that I was the gallery director of the art gallery we were standing next to. And he didn't believe it until he watched me unlock the door.
I like the point that you're bringing up there, because I think what I'm hearing from people online is that many people, as you said, don't believe that Micronesians are contributing to society enough. So this is a comment we just got live on YouTube from gThe, who says, we work and pay taxes into the system while still often being forbidden from using services. People continue to discriminate, and the only logical explanation is xenophobia. But it's that part about talking about using services and paying into the system that I want to focus on, because we heard from a doctor in Hawaii who talks about why this matters for people's day-to-day lives. He wrote this piece for Honolulu Civil Beat, how an Oahu doctor struggles to care for his Micronesian patients. And here is what he told the stream.
In 2008, with the Great Recession, the state of Hawaii, in an attempt to save money, removed compact migrants from Medicaid rolls. A legal battle ensued and their participation was reinstated, but they were finally kicked off of Medicaid in 2015. This has made it very difficult for me as a family physician to take care of them.
Anita, can you explain a bit and what that hardship looks like for people?
Sure. One thing that's important to know is that before 1996, COPA migrants were eligible for all federal public benefits that other immigrants were eligible. But this changed in the 1996 Welfare Reform Act, and that shifted the burden for covering healthcare for low-income people who happen to be COPA immigrants to the states. And so, as Dr. Yamada pointed out, Hawaii has kind of bulked from this responsibility around the time of the recession. They actually shifted COPA migrants to a different type of insurance plan that many people in the community say actually caused people to leave the islands and just go home because they didn't want to stay in Hawaii if they weren't able to get that care, and that with the implication that if you go home you'll pass away because there's not enough care there, or they think that helped complicate people's illnesses because they weren't able to get the care that they needed. So this it's very complicated, and it's changed over time, but now the state provides subsidies for people who are getting on Obamacare, but the process is definitely convoluted. It's not very straightforward, and it's difficult for people, and so it's one of the examples of the institutional barriers that people face. So it's not just hate speech. It's also, for example, you have to renew your license every year in Hawaii if you are a COPA migrant, instead of having 5 years the way that I do, or the way somebody with a U.S. passport would. You also, until recently, you couldn't serve on boards or commissions. And that changed last year when a Chuukese man joined the Civil Rights Commission. But there are just a myriad ways in which institutionally there are barriers if you are a COPA migrant here.
Kathy, what occurs to me is in this situation where there's prejudice and people are really annoyed in Hawaii, Americans are really annoyed with Micronesians being in Hawaii, that there's some basic knowledge that has gone missing, that they don't understand that there is a deal between the US and some Micronesian islands for their people to be able to come to the States and receive benefits, because meanwhile, back in their home, there are nuclear experiments going on and using it as military bases, etc. So it's a deal. Let me give you one example here. This is Hojo Leon, and I'm just going to go a little further down into his comment here. And he says 100% of low-income housing, Micronesians, and Hawaii allows this when they should not. Hawaii wastes billions of Micronesians that don't put a dime into the system. Meanwhile, US citizens, military veterans are still homeless. So this person obviously doesn't know about the deal. How do you change that, Kathy? Because this is an education process. Because this is obviously wrong.
I think that there's a lot of ways to change that. I think that conversations like these that began from this Twitter hashtag, you know, that Shaw began, that's actually a really great way to get that conversation going, you know. And then also the way that I personally change these kinds of perspectives is I try to, is through poetry. And so one of the first poems I actually ever wrote and put up on YouTube is Lessons from Hawaii, which was inspired by myself, my experience of growing up in Hawaii and experiencing racism as a Micronesian, you know. And so I really think it's just conversations at this point, you know, and getting more of the community in Hawaii aware of these links, because nuclear testing was conducted in the Marshall Islands after World War II. They literally incinerated more than a few of our islands, and one of them, Bikini Atoll, is still so contaminated we can't return.
Kathy?
And so that's a big contributing factor. Yes.
Kathy, it feels like a good point to actually play a little bit of your poetry, a little bit of your work that's also activism at the same time. This is a poem called Anointed. Have a listen, everybody.
You were a whole island once. You were breadfruit trees, heavy with green globes of fruit, whispering promises of massive canoes. Crabs dusted with white sand scuttled through pandanus roots. Then you became testing ground. 9 nuclear weapons consumed you, one by one by one, engulfed in an inferno of blazing heat. You became crater, an empty belly.
Kathy, does your work change people's minds? Do you feel that you're having an impact with your poetry that you're doing?
I think so. I'd like to think so. I think that the way that that's been demonstrated to me in the past is I've performed these poems to audience members that included people who knew Micronesians but weren't Micronesians, and they actually came up to me afterwards and said, "Thank you for sharing that poem about your experience of racism in Hawaii. I didn't think that really existed. You know, I didn't know that that was happening, or I felt that way too, and you know, now I see how that's wrong." So I've actually had quite a few people come up to me to discuss that with me, and so in that way, I think it can contribute, at least in a small way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's not only the shared poetry being kind of bridge for communities that I'm hearing from online, but it's also shared history and shared language, and people want to remind others about. This is Oatmeal's Revenge, that's the handle. On Twitter, I went to an all-Hawaiian high school and heard X dresses and looks like a Micronesian, or worse, uses an insult like every week. Hawaii locals, including native Hawaiians, all have a responsibility to say something about it when our friends and families perpetrate this racism. So I want to share with you a comment from someone who is doing just that. This is Adam, who wrote a fairly long post on Facebook about the similarities between Polynesians and Micronesians, and he sent us a video comment that I want to share with you. Have a listen to this.
People think that the Micronesians are different from us Hawaiians. That is not true. We are related by our languages and by the same ocean. We share the same ongoing colonial legacies, the same land issues, and the same issues on self-determination and climate change. As a Kanaka Maoli, considering how long Micronesians actually have been in Hawaii, how they have helped us reclaim our own maritime identity, and the fact that they are our cousin Pacific Islanders, the hatred directed toward them is nothing short but un-Hawaiian.
Shah, what do you think when you hear messages like that?
Especially because it's Adam and I love Adam. So I think for all the hate that went into creating the thread, the greatest part of it is how many people have come out as allies, as supporters, as people who are standing with us in solidarity, whether they're Hawaiian, Samoan. We have people who contacted us from Germany, Brazil. It's just, I think that's been the most amazing part of this. And I always wanted to point out that, yes, there were a lot of Native Hawaiians who had made these comments. However, in the grand scheme of things, there have been more Native Hawaiians who have come out in support than not. And I've still met more wonderful people here than otherwise. And so I think it's heartwarming and it gives me hope that, yes, this is generally how systems of oppression work, and one group will always kind of put down the other group. But at the same time, maybe we can shift that paradigm a little bit starting off.
Sure, I'm just thinking, because this compact, this deal between the US and some Micronesian states, that it's about funding. It's we give you this, you get that.
One of the most visible distinctions between the Micronesians and Africans is their physical appearance. Shaped by their environment over thousands of years, Africans who remained on the continent evolved features suited to varied climates for their homeland. For example, population in equatorial regions developed dark skin to protect against intense UV lights, while those in cooler areas like the Berbers of North Africa displayed lighter complexion. Micronesians, in contrast, shared genetic traits with Southeast Asians, with dark hair, brown skin, and medium builds well suited to their maritime lifestyle. The long distance they traveled and the challenges of oceanic life may have contributed to their robust physiques, enabling them to endure lengthy sea voyages. Let's have a look at the cultural divergences between the land and the sea. While Africans developed their civilization on solid ground, Micronesians thrived on the water. These fundamental differences shaped their perspective in cultures in a very profound way. In Africa, the availability of fertile land allowed for the development of agriculture and large centralized kingdoms. Societies like the ancient Egypt, Mali, and the Zulu Empire built monumental architecture. They developed written languages and maintained vast trade networks. Land was both a resource and a foundation for cultural expression, with art, religion, politics deeply tied to the earth. Micronesians, by contrast, live in a world defined by the ocean. Their greatest achievement were not building cities, but in navigating the vast Pacific. Using canoe-like vessels without outriggers, they travel between islands, relying on oral tradition and celestial navigation. Their spiritual belief often revolved around the sea, with gods and myths tied to the waves and the winds. Despite these differences, both groups shared a deep connection to their environment. Africans honored the spirits of the land and ancestors, while Micronesians revered the ocean as a source of life and guidance. So Africans and Micronesians are just one people, but they became different over time. You get it? Geographic isolation played a crucial role in shaping modern Micronesian society. It was separated by vast oceans. These communities developed unique languages, customs, and technologies. However, their isolation also left them vulnerable to external forces. When European explorers arrived in the Pacific in the 16th century, they disrupted centuries-old traditions, introducing new diseases and colonial rule. Africans, while never entirely isolated, also faced challenges from external contact. The trans-Saharan and later the transatlantic slave trade profoundly altered African societies, leading to centuries of exploitation. Yet Africa's size and diversity allowed its people to maintain their cultural identities, even in the face of colonization. Here's what we need to know about modern challenges and connections the Micronesians are facing. Today, both Micronesians and Africans face unique challenges. Rising sea levels threaten the existence of the Micronesian islands, forcing their people to grapple with the potential loss of their homeland. For Africans, the legacies of colonialism and the struggle for economic independence remains pressing issues. Despite their differences, both groups share a story of resilience and adaptation. Africans and Micronesians have persevered, or rather have preserved their traditions, even as they navigate the complexities of a globalized world. From the rhythm of African drums to the chants of Micronesian navigators, their voices remind us of the diversity and unity of the human experience. The histories of the Micronesians and Africans illustrate the remarkable ways humans have adapted to their environment, while separated by vast distances and shaped by different circumstances. Both groups represent their ingenuity and diversity of our species. By studying the Micronesian stories, we gain a deeper appreciation for the many paths humanity has taken and shared heritage that unites us all as humans. Now, if you're somebody who was like me in the past, asking some of the clear differences that we have between the Micronesians and the Africans, today I have you covered. Let's go. Skin tone. The Africans first. Africans exhibit a wide spectrum of skin tones, from deep ebony to light brown, influenced by the continent's diverse climates. Those in equatorial regions, such as the Bantu-speaking people of Central and East Africa, typically have a dark skin due to higher levels of melanin, which offers protection against intense UV lights. In contrast, population in Northern Africa, like the Berbers, often have lighter skin due to their adaptation in cooler and less UV-intense climates and possible admixture with Eurasian populations. The Micronesians, on the other side, they generally have a medium brown skin tones. Their complexion reflects their ancestry from Austronesian peoples, combined with adaptations to tropical island environments. While they experience high UV exposure, the oceanic climate and consistent humidity moderate the selection pressures for darker skin compared to equatorial Africans. Another thing is facial features. Africans display a vast array of facial structures due to the genetic diversity on the continent. The common traits between Africans include broad noses with wider nostrils. Africans, particularly among the populations in warm, humid regions, where this trait aids in humidifying and cooling air. So you having a broad nose and a wider nostril helps you to survive in humid areas, you know. We have high cheekbones as Africans. This is often seen in groups like the Dinka of Sudan. Another one is fuller lips, a feature common among many sub-Saharan African population. We have fat lips, we Africans, you know, and that's a good thing. Micronesians have facial features that blend their Austronesian ancestry with the localized adaptation. Typical traits include straighter or moderately flat noses, reflecting their Southeast Asian roots, rounder faces with less pronounced cheekbones than many Africans. Another one is thinner lips compared to sub-Saharan Africans, though variation exists across those islands. Another thing is the hair and the texture and the type. Africans often have tightly coiled kinky hair. This texture helps protect the scalp from the sun while allowing airflow to the head, an adaptation to cool climates. Hair color ranges from black to dark brown, with some populations showing reddish hues due to specific genetic variation or environmental factors. To the Micronesians, they generally have straight or wavy hair, inherited from the Austronesian ancestors. Their hair is typically thick and dark, often jet black, and well suited to humid tropical environments. This straight textured hair allows for quicker evaporation of sweat, which helps with cooling in humid climates. Body build and stature. In Africans display a wide range of body builds shaped by environmental factors. We have taller, lean builds, seen in populations like the Maasai and the Dinka. These body types are adaptation to heat dissipation in hot and arid climates. We also have the shorter, stockier builds, common among groups in forested regions such as the Pygmies of Central Africa. These are adaptations for maneuvering dense environments for conserving heat in cooler, shaded climates. What about the Micronesians? They generally have medium to stocky builds shaped by their maritime lifestyle and diet. Their physique are often muscular, reflecting the demands for seafaring and fishing. The stockier body type helps conserve energy during long ocean voyages and provide resilience against variable weather conditions. The eyes now. African population typically have larger almond eyes with dark brown irises. Eye adaptation include a higher density of melanin in the iris, which protect against intense sunlight. For the Micronesians, they also have a dark brown eyes, but their eyes are slightly less pronounced than those of many sub-Saharan Africans. These reflect the Austronesian heritage and the need for adaptation to the glare of oceanic environments. The lips, fuller lips, which is the fat lips for Africans, and the Micronesians have a generally medium to thinner lips. Adaptations to the environment. The phenotypic traits of Africans often reflect adaptation to extreme variation in climate. Dark skin and tightly coiled hair protect against UV radiation and overheating. We have lean bodies and long limbs in desert-dwelling population and in cooling through efficient heat dissipation. We have lean bodies and dark skin, tightly coiled hair among Africans, you know. In Africa, we have some places where they experience a lot of sunlight. Another place they experience a lot of rainfall. There's a lot of humidity. The highland regions of Africa are very humid, so you expect to see some Africans having some different distinctive characteristics as compared to the rest of the population. You understand? Micronesians, on the other hand, have the traits that reflect adaptation to a tropical maritime environment. Medium skin tones provide some UV protection without the darker pigmentation seen in equatorial Africans. Sturdy, muscular builds are advantageous for seafaring and survival in isolated environments. Now, these Micronesians are built for water. That's it. They are built for water. If you've watched that movie, Moana 1, not the second, the first, you see those people are like Micronesians. Yeah, so you can see how built they are. They're huge, right? To conclude, phenotypical differences between Micronesians and Africans are rooted in their evolutionary histories and the environmental pressures for their respective regions. Africans, as the most genetically diverse human population, display a broad range of physical traits, many of which are directly influenced by the varied climate of the African continent. In contrast, Micronesians exhibit phenotypes reflecting their Austronesian ancestry, an adaptation to life in isolated island settings. Now, there's more to these Micronesians that we've tried to share, you know.